This is Chris with Smoky Creek Woodworks, and in the next few videos I will show you how I made this built-in closet using red oak that I cut and milled from our own property about 4 years ago now. The tree was leaning toward the house and had a lightning strike that forced us to remove the tree. In this video I will show you how I made the plywood casework for the built-in. The way I designed this closet, I needed to make a separate toe kick, and I used the plywood from the poorly designed and poorly built closet that came with the house. By making a separate toe kick platform, I now have the chance to make a strong base and make that base level because my floors are not level in the space. And of course I can't use screws in a project without the battery dying in my drill. I always seem to pick up the battery that is not fully charged. It's a talent of mine, I guess. Just a simple frame and top for this toe kick, but it should be enough to take all the weight of this built-in. I did not record shimming to level and drilling the base into the wall studs and the floor joist to secure it into place, but I did manage to record myself standing on top of it. I guess when you make a platform, standing on it is mandatory. Next up is cutting all the parts for the carcass of the built-ins. As you have probably noticed, I do not have the space to cut a full sheet of plywood in my shop, or even get a full sheet of plywood into my shop. So I'm back outside to break down all my parts. The downside to working outside is that I have to haul all the parts down the cellar steps and back into my shop. This project was really big and took way too many trips up and down these steps to bring all the material in, over and over and over again. This fat boy earned a Reese cup. I did choose to use rabbets and dado joinery to help me assemble this carcass for a more strong and, more importantly, a more square assembly than if I would have just used butt joints. I am not good enough to make a casework that is accurate just by using butt joints. With the dado stack and the table saw, I went super slowly through the cut and used a push paddle to keep pressure as close to the blade as my fingers felt comfortable. The main reason for this is the plywood was slightly bowed and did not sit flat on my table saw. There were some cuts that did not turn out as cleanly as I wanted to, so I ran the plywood through the cut for a second time. By taking care on these steps to make good joinery now, I believe I saved myself a lot of time later on. The next operation is to make the rabbet for the back panel. I needed to use the router for this because I do not have the infeed or outfeed space at my table saw. The reason I included a back panel for this built-in is to help me square the carcass during a glue up and to improve the strength and rigidity of the case. With the joinery and other dimensions finalized, I can start to cut my top, bottom, and center dividers. Here is where I made my biggest mistake during this project. I messed up the grain direction on the top and the middle divider. It turned out not to detract from the look as much as I had feared, but it still bothers me that I made the oversight. But plywood is way too expensive right now to go out and buy another sheet, so I just have to live with it. After sanding and prepping all the interior faces and all the faces that will be seen, I began to stain and pre-finish the parts in my shop. Doing this now with all the pieces disassembled will make this process much easier and give me a better chance for a more uniform finish. This is also a great view of just how small my shop is and how inconvenient large projects can be. Now it is finally time to assemble all of these pieces into a really big box. I took all the pieces upstairs to assemble everything on site because I could not fit an assembled case out of my shop, let alone up the stairs and onto the second floor. I also got to use the squaring jigs that I made a few months ago to keep the pieces square and in place. I'll add a link of that video where I made the jigs into the description. I began with pre-drilling the entire casework before adding glue to help everything go back together faster and more accurately. This also made a large glue up like this much less stressful. Unfortunately, by doing this, I now have to assemble the whole thing twice. It was definitely nice to have the squaring jigs to clamp everything together since I tend to work alone and I only have so many hands to get a job done. With the carcass pre-drilled, I can very quickly screw all the pieces back together and move on to adding the back panel to keep everything square and solid for when I move it into place. After a few hours in clamps, I can move the carcass into position, narrowly avoiding the ceiling fan, I might add. Now begins the tedious process of shimming to plumb and triple checking the squareness of the case to make sure the future doors and drawers will function properly. I use some long screws to fasten into the wall studs in places that will never or rarely be seen once this is built and put together. Afterward, I needed to give the whole case just a little wiggle, make sure it won't move anywhere. The way I designed the face frame, I needed to put a few spacers in between each of the closet carcasses, and again I tried to place the screws where they will not be seen or where they will rarely be seen once assembled. Now I get to find out if all of my careful measurements are accurate enough to work with as I try to slide the second case into place. Good news for me, I was able to slide under the ceiling and fit in that space well enough, so now I need to connect both boxes together and into the toe kick. Next up, I add the drawer dividers, or fake dust frames. Really, they're just things to glue my face frame to. I have no idea what they would be called, but they will give me the look that I ultimately want, and a chance to play patty cake after a very exhausting day. In the next video, I will be making the face frame and the doors. I also took a chance to use more traditional joinery and hand tools because working with so much plywood was not a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you for watching.